Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 9 of WWD What Went Down. We're going to be talking about tonight's games between the Rams and the Bengals, and then the Bucks versus the Eagles. We'll kick things off with the fantasy side of things. You guys already know how it goes down. So get some whipped creams on them titties, and I'll start licking them off, and I'll see you right in there. Alrighty, kicking things off. We had me, who basically bullied Mosto, or J-Bay's team, over tripled the points. J-Bay's really not doing much here, you know that. There isn't really much to talk about. We'll talk about the players we had still, obviously. Jamar Chase is finally looking like that top 5 pick that I took him for and a lot of other people took him for. 12 catches, 141 yards, 15 targets, greatness around the board. On top of that, Joe Burrow is actually playing through an injury, so imagine how good he could be if Burrow's healthy and is actually fucking trying. But overall, it's a very good sign. I'm glad to see him finally do something. Um, and then we had A.J. Brown, who's been having a lower half couple weeks. Week 1 was good, but week 2, he kind of fell off a little bit. But as I was telling everybody in the chat, whenever he goes against teams that are actually better when it comes to the defense is when he'll start doing good compared to Devontae Smith. He had 25 points. He had 9 catches for 131 yards. Very good. He's getting the targets. He's getting the catches. The only thing he didn't get is touchdowns. But overall, that's really good. It just means he has the upside of potentially getting touchdowns, but today he just didn't get them. But overall, he did very good. 25 points. I'm really liking my receivers right now. They're starting to take shape and look just like how I would have wanted them to. Then on top of that, I also had Kyron Williams, who started. Now, Kyron Williams was a bit of a disappointment. He had 10 attempts for 38 yards, 2 catches, 27 receiving yards. He's also the kick returner, but he really doesn't do anything other than fair catch the fucking thing. But anyway, it was a disappointing night, but there were at least 3 passes where Stafford just completely missed him when he was wide open for routes. In terms of the run game, he almost had 4 yards per carry, so a bit underwhelming, like I said, but with the receptions, he almost had it, and then he has that touchdown upside on a week-to-week basis, but he just didn't hit it tonight. Um, I'm not concerned going into upcoming weeks, but it's just a disappointment for this week. But I'm not that sad about it or concerned about it, like I said. Then we had Puka Nakua, who has been blowing up for the first 2 weeks, but this week he had 5 catches for 72 yards on 7 targets, which is not bad by any means. It's pretty damn solid, but compared to what he's done in the first 2 weeks, he didn't look like an elite player, but he did look pretty damn solid though overall. Um, can't really complain about it. He's getting the targets, he's getting the catches, he's getting the yards. Pretty much good around the board, just didn't get that touchdown. Then I had Mike Evans, who had 5 catches for 60 yards and did get a touchdown. He had 10 targets too, but he was in a very tough matchup against Darius Slay. But overall, he did pretty good. It was a pretty back and forth battle between the wide receiver and the corner, respectively. Um, Overall, I'm pretty happy to see that he's still getting 10 targets in a game. I would hope he catches the ball more in future games, but overall, 60 yards, touchdown, 5 catches. Who might have complained? It's pretty solid. Chris Godwin, 3 catches for 32 yards, and he got a 2-point conversion. This is where I'm not so happy. I'm really waiting for Godwin to kind of do something here. He's been a disappointment all season. Like, he hasn't been bad, but he's just been on that level of disappointing. You would expect him to do at least a bit better. Sometimes have one of those good weeks, but so far he just hasn't hit it. Granted, he was playing against the Eagles' defense, which is just pretty good, but tonight was estimated to be the game where he blew up by a lot of people, but overall, it's not really that great. I'm probably going to be keeping him on my bench unless I end up trading him or somebody else. Um, but it's a very good bench option to have still, and he is startable because it's not like he's playing bad. It's just disappointing compared to some of these other guys I already named off. And then going over to J-Bay's team because that's all I had on my team. J-Bay had Jake Gervais, who he isn't even fucking playing. I don't even know if he's on the team. Um, then he had Kenneth Gainwell for the Eagles, who went in there and had 14 rush attempts for 43 yards. He had a catch for 5 yards as well. Even if even if he didn't put up many fantasy points, it is a good sign that he's getting that many attempts with rushing the ball. At least that means he's splitting the backfield with DeAndre Swift, because there were a lot of people who thought Swift was just going to go in there and pretty much be the Eagles' whole backfield, which he kind of was, but he still, at least Kenneth Gainwell was getting a lot of attempts with this, which is good news for J-Bay, but, J-Bay, he's not going to ever move Kenneth Gainwell from that bench spot. Then he had Tampa Bay's defense. Now, don't let it fool you, even though they only had 11 points, this Tampa Bay's defense did not do bad. They definitely did not do bad at all. The worst thing you can argue is that they allowed about 472 yards, but they did get a sack. They got 2 interceptions, and keep in mind they are playing against arguably the best offensive line in football. A lot of people think it is the best offensive line in football, and one of the better offenses around the board. But overall, they held them to 25 points, 2 of which were a safety, and a lot of it was the offense kind of getting bullied by the Eagles and just fucking over this Tampa Bay defense in terms of fantasy, but overall it's not really a concern. I think the defense did pretty damn solid for where they were. You can argue disappointing, but I don't think they did bad, though, by any means. Then we move on to Pussy and Big Yawners. Pussy actually did not have anyone playing in this game, but he still was able to hold on to the win over Big Yawners. He just had too much of a lead. This was an absolute shootout this week. Pretty fun to watch, but Pussy held on in the end. Big Yawners actually had quite a few people here. We'll kick things off with Logan Wilson, who I believe had 2 interceptions. Yeah, he had 2 interceptions, 3 tackle solo, 1 tackle assist, 2 pass deflects. Yeah, he did very good. You would hope for more tackles, obviously. I say that's like the consistency thing to go off of. Interceptions aren't promised, but overall, he was making plays. He was at least doing stuff, so he finishes in the positive. But like I said, it is concerning that he doesn't get those tackles, but that kind of is going to happen when the team you're playing doesn't run the ball at all. The Rams barely ran the ball, to be honest. I forget already how many attempts Kyren Williams had, but they didn't run him too much. And then we'll move on to the next player Big Yawners had. He actually had Jermaine Pratt, who, on the other hand, compared to Logan Wilson, did not put up those big stats to make his week seem better. Only a tackle and an assist. This is what I was warning you guys about with Jermaine Pratt. He's boom or bust. He'll either do really good or he'll do really bad on a week-to-week basis. Sometimes he just doesn't do shit. I don't know why he does this, but he does it every season. He's better than a lot of the options on free agency still, but it is something you should know whenever you're getting ready to go play him, like I said. Overall, yeah. Then Joe Burrow, he had on the bench. It wasn't because he thought Joe Burrow sucked. It was because Joe Burrow was questionable until like an hour before the game. But Burrow, the fantasy stats don't do him justice. This is the one time I'm actually going to defend Burrow. Burrow was getting pressured all night. The offensive line was trying to murder him, I swear to God. But he had 259 pass yards. He threw a pick. The only pick he threw wasn't even entirely his fault. He threw it. It pretty much went in the hands of Tyler Boyd. And I forget the corner Tyler Boyd is on. I'll look at it whenever we're in the thing later because it was one of those players I've just never heard of, to be honest. But overall, it was into the hands of Tyler Boyd, and it went right to the cornerback after that. So you can't really blame Burrow for that. He was actually gunslinging for what it was worth, and he was playing through that injury. T. Higgins, on the other hand, another receiver for the Bengals, was dropping shit left and right. So Burrow really did do pretty damn good, and I've been talking shit on Burrow all year, but he did pretty damn good tonight. But the guys around him really sold him, except for Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon. They each did their jobs, but everybody else, the O-line, the receiving core, everybody was just kind of throwing. And we'll talk more about it later too. And then speaking of the receiving core, Big Yawners actually had Tyler Boyd, who you might be wondering, well, how the hell does he have 5 catches for 39 yards and 10.9 points? Well, it's because he got that tackle solo after he fucked up and caused Burrow to throw the interception. And that's another thing, too. The Bengals didn't throw any touchdowns. That's what is kind of holding the stats back for Burrow. But overall, yeah, Boyd went out there, and at least he was getting targets. If Higgins were to miss any time, because Higgins did get taken off the field for some reason. I'm not sure why. but he did. We'll talk about it whenever we get to Mr. Steeler Girl. Um, but I'll try to keep you guys updated as soon as I can on it. But yeah, Boyd went in there. He was getting a few targets. He was getting okay yards, but yeah, overall he was getting a lot of targets. So for a bench option, he's a lot better than a lot of free agents out there. I'll give Big Yawners that. But in terms of real life, Boyd is not looking like he looked like whenever he was first in the league, to say the least. He's definitely looking washed. And then we'll move on to the next player Big Yawners had, which is Devin White. Devin White had an all-around solid performance as a linebacker, one of the most solid ways you can have one. He had 5 tackles solo, 2 assists, so that's 7 tackles total, which is solid. And then he had a pick for 26 return yards as well. And this was him playing through an injury as well. So overall, I think this is a pretty good week, pretty damn good week. You can't really complain about much. I'd expected a lot more. The only bad thing he did so far this whole year was against the Bears, who've basically not been allowing middle linebackers to do anything all season because, yeah, they just get bullied so bad. And that's about it. This was a pretty good matchup. Moving on to Rick Tatership and Scrambled and Wiggle Waggled. Rick Tatership had Rashad White, who, with 14 rush attempts, could not get the ball moving at all. I believe that's under 3 yards per carry he was averaging through the ground game, which isn't good at all. The Eagles' D-line was just doing really, really, really good. But you guys probably expect that. The Eagles' D-line is just insanely good. But yeah, Rashad White couldn't get the ball running on the ground at all. He had a few catches, which is solid news, but only 24 yards, and he did fumble when he lost the fumble. So, yeah, it's not great news for Rashad White. Yeah, things are looking a little concerning there, but there is something I'll tell you. Like I said, it's that they're playing a ridiculously good defense, which you have, so I wouldn't be that concerned, but it's definitely starting to get iffy, and if I were you, I would be fingers crossing for Taylor to come back as soon as possible. Um, Next up, you had Evan McPherson, the kicker. Now, this guy was your MVP of the week, obviously. Not really. He just had 2 field goals, or he had 4 total field goals and a PAT, which is pretty good. He's making the long field goals, what you want to see out of a kicker, like the absolute perfect scenario. This is the Evan McPherson upside I had whenever we were doing the rankings videos. And let's hope he gets to see this more often. Let's hope the Bengals, in general, just start having the offense cook up again. Because, yeah, it's been a depressing few first weeks, but at least the Bengals started doing something tonight, even though it wasn't a lot of points. Hopefully we'll see more as the weeks go on. But we'll see. But this is a good sign for your kicker, to say the least. Then you had Philadelphia's defense, who went in there and they just decimated the Tampa Bay offense. They got a safety on them. They had a pick, 2 sacks. They were getting tackles for loss left and right. Baker Mayfield was under pressure all night. The run game wasn't existent for the Bucs. Overall, the Eagles defense just had their way with them. Pretty good fantasy game for them as well. Overall, yeah, it's a very good defense to have in terms of fantasy. Definitely probably one of the top 3 out there. Maybe top 2 now that Dallas lost their Pro Bowl corner and got bullied by Arizona. I guess we'll find out once we make the rankings videos. But overall, yeah, that's pretty much it for the Eagles defense, at least. There isn't really much else worth mentioning, I don't think. Well, there is one thing. They do have return yards they've been getting. That's what I wanted to say is they are getting return yards, which are nice brownie points. They had 128, as you'll see right on the right side there with the stats. And then next up, Rick Tatership also had Levante David, the counterpart to Devin White, and he's another one that did really, really good this week. He actually did better than Devin White. 9 tackles solo, 4 assists, a sack, tackle for loss. Fantastic. That's everything you ever would want in a linebacker. Getting all the tackles, getting sacks, so he's getting his bonus stats. It's exactly what you would want from a linebacker. His only bad week, again, was against the Bears. Same team, same problems. But overall, very good week. Exactly what you might want to see out of your linebacker. Couldn't ask for anything more. That's perfect. This is everything you want to see. You just hope he keeps it up. And then you move on to Scrambled and Wiggle Waggled, who had Tyler Higbee, who had a solid week. He had 5 catches for 71 yards. For a receiver, that's not going to be too exciting. It's going to be okay. But for a tight end, yeah, that's pretty good. Um, for a tight end to put up that many yards, that's pretty good. And usually tight ends don't get as many targets as receivers, but overall, yeah, he did very good for a tight end, especially for what he's expected to do on a week-to-week basis. He's kind of doing what I expected him to do at the start of the year. Uh, I wish scrambled and wiggle waggled luck on him continuing that trend. I guess we'll see as games go on. But yeah, Higbee did pretty good tonight. And then scrambled and wiggle waggle also had Baker Mayfield. Now this is where he did not look so good. Baker Mayfield went out there, and yeah, the Eagles defense just looked amazing. They look Baker Mayfield was out there looking like Ash from Evil Dead, getting ready to fight all the Deadites. I don't even think any of you even watch that, but anyway, back to the point. Baker Mayfield just didn't look good. He was just kind of getting tossed around. The run game didn't exist. The passing game didn't exist for most of the game. They went down there and scored a touchdown towards the ending of the game overall, but yeah, there isn't too much great to say, at least for this week with Baker. And weeks past, he did better, though. But once he goes against these tougher defenses, it's starting to look like he's going to struggle, at least based off of that one game sample size we had. I wouldn't necessarily cut him. Like I said, I think that's just kind of like him playing a really good defense. And then, yeah, overall, Dictatorship took off with this one, won the matchup of the week. He's now 2-0 in matchups of the week. He beat Big Yawners last week. Yeah, I'll try to talk about what PMC said. Yeah, I'll try to make more accurate matchup of the weeks. Um, yeah, that was something, even though it's not part of WWD. Scrambled and Wiggle Waggled's defense really underperformed against the Cardinals when the Cowboys just decided to lose. Still making fun of Cree for that. That was funny as fuck. Even though I'm a Bears fan, I would argue. Let me know what's worse: losing by 40 points to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, or having the estimated best defense in the league, one of the best teams in the NFL, and losing to fucking Joshua Dobbs. Let me know what you guys think is more embarrassing. Or hell, let's throw the Broncos in, because nobody's a fan of the Broncos, but let's throw the Broncos in here. The Broncos lost by 50 points and allowed 70 points to be scored against them, and they're another one that's supposed to have one of the better defenses. So let me know what you guys think. Which of those is the most embarrassing? But overall, Dictatorship was still able to take off with the win, so he can't be too upset. And plus, that was a divisional game too. And then we'll move on to MILF and Toxic Zenpai. MILF had Rashad Penny. I don't think he started him. Let's see. Yeah, he did not. Now Rashad Penny at this point is completely droppable. To be honest, that's at best that is the best thing I can absolutely say. He's not getting snaps. He's not getting. That means he's not getting run attempts. He's not getting targets. He's not getting anything. This backfield is entirely coming down to Kenneth Gainwell and DeAndre Swift. Rashad Penny is done. He's not doing anything. It's pretty obvious. They tried to use him last week whenever they used him for like 2 plays whenever Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell were out, and not even seeing him on the field this week. Yeah, he's probably not going to be out there, especially when Boston Scott returns. So yeah, he's droppable. You could probably drop him for a pack of Scooby snacks, and it would be an upgrade. And then you had Willie Golston, who had 2 tackles solo and an assist. This guy's droppable too. This is his best week yet by far, and 5 points still isn't good. He's another one that's droppable. You could probably take the highest projected guy in free agency, and he'd be a way better option, or a lot more guys as well. Fucking Toxic decided he was just going to become Jesus Christ this week in fantasy. Both of his teams, for Toxic Zenpai, fun fact, both of his teams in the 2 leagues he's in combined for a grand total of 780 points. So yeah, Toxic decided to have a glass of wake the fuck up this week when it came to fantasy. I don't quite know why, but you know what? He did it. Week 3 Toxic is the one-hit wonder of the world. Let's see if he can keep it up. But anyway, Toxic's only player he had was Matthew Stafford, who, regardless of Toxic putting up 400 points on average per week 3, Stafford had a bit of an underwhelming performance. His issue was turnovers overall. The offensive line let up quite a few sacks to the Bengals, especially at the end of the game whenever they needed to start being pass heavy. But overall, there was some stupid interceptions that ended up being made, and Overall, Stafford did look good besides those 2 picks and all the sacks and all that stuff, but that was more the D line just taking over on the offensive line. But overall, he got that touchdown at the ending of the game. You'd hope to see more yards, obviously, but I'm not too concerned about this. I think this was just more of a fluke week where the offensive line got bullied by a really good Bengals D line that has DJ Reader, BJ Hill, 2 really good defensive tackles, Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson. Just a very good D line overall, so it makes sense. But it might be worth noting that you might not want to start Stafford in future games against good D lines. So, for example, let's say Pittsburgh or Dallas or Green Bay. All of those are probably not going to be fun matchups for Stafford. This is just a warning, but we will see as the games go on. Overall, Toxic really blew up on MILF this time. And then we'll move on to the next one where Karen's husband is actually going to be going to 2-1. Who bet on Karen's husband having a positive record going into week 4? I certainly didn't. And who bet on Jackson going 0-3? Things are getting crazy, huh? But anyway, Karen had nobody in all of tonight's game, so we'll kind of skip over him for now. But overall, he did get the win still. While Mr. Steeler had T. Higgins, who was dropping shit left and right. He had at least 4 catchable drops that I noticed. He had 8 targets for 2 catches, so those other 2 that I missed might have been catchable. I'm not certain. And then at some point, he went to the locker room. I still don't know what for. I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know if it was something going on. I have no idea. They just kind of announced, like, in the background that he was in the locker room and wasn't on the field playing with the Bengals anymore. So that's a little bit concerning if you're a Bengals fan, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see. There's really no story out as of me making this WWD episode, but overall, he wasn't looking good anyway. T. Higgins just, I don't know if he's trying to get traded or what. He's really not looking good, but he did have that week too, so maybe he just had a fluke week. Who knows? Um, and then Mr. Steeler Girl also had Tutu Atwell as well. We had the whole big debacle with Tutu this morning. Tutu Atwell only had 4 catches for 50 yards. He did have a rush attempt for 22 yards. He had the touchdown too. You'd hope for more yards and more targets. The one was kind of it wasn't a garbage time one, but it was definitely a situation where the Rams were purposely passing a lot more because they were down. So yeah, you definitely hope for more targets. The yards are good. The touchdown's good. Overall, it's a solid week for him. But yeah, you'd hope for more targets in the upcoming games. But overall, yeah, Mr. Steeler Girl, because T. Higgins decided to shit himself tonight, Karen's husband takes the win, steals it from Mr. Steeler Girl. And yeah, this is going to be a tough hole to climb out of for Steeler Girl. He's going 0-3 now. This is tough. And then here's where we had the main event, the absolute shit show, the can of the corn, whatever you want to call it. PMC went from having another like 90% chance of winning the game to Booty Basher deciding to pull an Evan and just absolutely fuck over PMC. This is the second time in 3 weeks going into the late games that PMC had this happen. Now, this did happen to me week 1 against Pussy, but overall, it's just funny that this happens twice in 3 weeks to somebody. This was making me laugh my ass off. I couldn't stop laughing. This shit's so funny. This is PMC's first year for fantasy. I'm not certain about Booty, but anyway, let's get right into the players. Booty had Jalen Hurts, who, in terms of real life, really didn't look good. He did not look good at all. 1 pass touchdown, 2 interceptions. He had 277 pass yards. He only had 28 rushing yards. And he had that rushing touchdown, which kind of padded his night to get him back into the projected area. But, yeah, it was not a good game in terms of skill. It just was one of those scenarios where he had enough to pad his fantasy points. So that's a bit concerning, but oh well. He was against the Buccaneers defense, which is pretty damn good. He had Dallas Goedert, who had 5 catches, 41 yards. Similar situation to Tyler Higbee. He's getting good catches, good yards. You'd hope for a little bit more out of Goddard because he is usually better than Higbee. But overall, it's not that bad. It's a solid performance, just a little bit under expectations. So really not too bad. Granted, he was against 2 of the best coverage linebackers in the league in Levante David and Devin White, so That's worth mentioning too, of course. So obviously, I think he does have that upside in future weeks. Nothing to panic about. Um, then you also had DeAndre Swift, who had another good week. 16 rush attempts, 130 yards, a catch for 8 reception yards. Um, Rushing attempts, fantastic. He's splitting with Kenneth Gainwell. The good news is if you're on the side of the coin with these Eagles running backs um, that Booty Basher's on, Swift went out there and entirely outperformed Kenneth Gainwell. It wasn't even fucking close. Kenneth Gainwell went out there and pretty much got stuffed each time, while Swift went out there and cooked up. The only concerning thing here is if they start for whatever reason trying to use Kenneth Gainwell more, but it wouldn't make sense to. And also you'd want Swift to get more targets. For now, he's only getting rush attempts, which are great. Don't get me wrong, but if you can get some good targets and receptions for your running back, that would make things a lot better. Um, and then overall, we'll move on to Cincinnati's defense. Now, it's the second time. It's a good thing you didn't listen to me yet again with the start bench recommendations. I'm not gonna lie. Whenever I'm making the one, I'm gonna look over all the moves I made. I'm probably gonna get clowned on for this week. I made a lot of bad recommendations this week. At least I'm assuming I did, because this is a bad one. I recommended he started Green Bay's defense, but anyway, he started Cincinnati. He didn't listen, and it worked out in his favor. He had 16 points allowed, 6 sacks, 2 interceptions, 45 kick return yards. They did just amazing. He pretty much as good as you can expect from a defense. They shut down this Rams offense around the board, had some good sacks. And overall, it's pretty much what you'd want to see. The safeties look pretty good. We'll talk about the Dax Hill guy in a second here, because Booty actually has him as well. And yeah, the Bengals defense just looked very good around the board. The only thing questionable about this defense now, I think, is actually the corners. Earlier in the season, I was worried about the safeties. And then Booty actually moved on, and Booty has Aaron Donald as well, who had 5 tackle solo, 2 tackle assists. He had a sack and 2 tackles for loss. He's looking like that player of the year, top 5 defensive option, or top 5 players in the whole NFL that he usually is looking like. So that's good to see if you're Booty Basher, because he's struggled throughout the first 2 weeks. But you know what? If he's able to make it work and start doing it consistently, Booty might have one of the best defensive linemen in the league. Next up, he had Ernest Jones, who went in there 7 tackle solo, 2 tackles assist, pass deflect, tackle for loss. That's fantastic. That's 9 tackles, and then a pass deflect means he was also at the ball. That's kind of like 10 times where he's getting those points. Very good week for him. Can't really ask for much more. He's had a very good season. He's went in there and made Bobby Wagner proud. I guess he must have learned a thing or two from Wagner. But overall, he's doing very good. You're very happy to see that if you're a Booty Basher. Then the icing on the cake for Booty Basher has to be Dax Hill, who's going in there getting 7 tackle solo, a tackle assist, and he's getting sacks / tackles for loss. Very good around the board. He's yet to have a great week. He's only had elite weeks. That's how good this guy is. His worst week, he gets 6 tackles solo. As a safety, this guy is a cheat code pretty much. He's doing very good if he can keep this up. That's exactly what Booty wants, and Booty's looking like a damn contender right now. He also has Josh Sweat, who played tonight. He had 3 tackle solo and a tackle assist. For a defensive lineman, that's actually a solid sign, because at least you know he's getting tackles, so he does have a level of consistency to him. Granted, he didn't get that in the earlier weeks, so he is a little concerning in the long run. There's probably better options out there. I'm not going to lie to you, Booty, but he's not doing bad, though. 7 points is It's a little underperforming, but, you know, there's definitely better options. That's all I'll say. And then PMC had Devontae Smith. Now, it goes back to what I was saying about A.J. Brown, where anytime the Eagles play against a good defense, Devontae Smith is no longer that number one receiver that PMC seems to think he is. All of a sudden, Devontae Smith actually starts getting tight coverage on him, and safeties actually start paying attention to him. And it comes down to A.J. Brown, who has to be the physical receiver and go in there and win over the dominant catches and the jump balls a lot more. Devontae Smith is almost entirely reliant on the other team scripting around A.J. Brown, and that's something I think PMC is going to find out the hard way as we go throughout the season. Am I saying to cut him? No. Am I saying to trade him? No. This guy definitely still has the upside on a week-to-week basis. At any point, he could still blow up like he did in the first few weeks. It's absolutely possible. But I'm just saying, don't expect those weeks as commonly as you seem to have in the first few weeks. Stuff like this is going to happen, and sometimes even lower. So he's definitely not the most consistent guy out there, but his upside is still through the roof. You also had Joe Mixon, 19 rush attempts, 65 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, catch for 5 yards. It's a damn good performance overall with the rushing game. He had that touchdown as well. Now you really, really do want to see more targets for Mixon if you're PMC. You want to see more catches. Overall, it's a solid night though. You can't really complain that much. The touchdown made things seem a bit better than they were. But overall, like I said, you just want to be seeing more targets for Mixon here. Other than that, it's pretty good, just kind of like DeAndre Swift. And then you also had Antoine Winfield, safety for the Buccaneers. 5 tackle solos, 6 assists. And that's a very good sign. That's 11 total tackles. 6 assists, basically means he could have had 6 more points if Yahoo registered it to him as solos. So overall, another very good week. Week 2 is kind of a dud against the Bears. The Bears are where defensive players go to just fall off, I guess. But overall, Winfield has another good week. You're looking forward to him in upcoming weeks. Now we'll move over to the actual games. And we'll start with the Buccaneers and Eagles since they were the ones who played first. Now, Jalen Hurts, like I said, he really didn't do great. He's been kind of struggling this year. Granted, there is something to consider. He's playing the Bucs. Very good defense around the board. One of the better defenses out there. 23 for 37. An okay stat line alone. 277 yards. Another okay stat line, getting on the good half. But the 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions, that's not what you want to see in terms of your quarterback in real life. And then let's look at the run game here, where DeAndre Swift had 16 rush attempts for 130 yards. We already talked about this pretty much, but yeah, Swift is taking over this backfield. You can see the clear as day difference between the 14 for 43 and 16 for 130, 8.1 yards per average and 3.1. Gainwell's probably going to start losing out this backfield if he keeps this up. Overall, Swift is just outperforming him. And Hurts is at this point looking like Lamar Jackson, where he's getting 10 rush attempts for 30 yards. He's barely able to get anything going on the run. But he had the touchdown. Yeah, that's where it's getting concerning for Jalen Hurts. That usually means a quarterback is starting to get confused or struggle when they start running this much, if they don't have to. So yeah, things are getting concerning with Jalen Hurts. I'll be the first to admit here. But at least in terms of fantasy, at least the rushing upside's there. Can't deny that. A.J. Brown had a phenomenal night. Went out there, did his thing, cooked up, 9 catches, 131 yards. Great around the board. And for those of you from Pennsylvania, Olamide Zacchaeus is actually from the number 1 high school in our state called St. Joseph's Prep. I don't know, I just figured it was a quick fact to throw in there. He had 2 catches for 58 yards. One of them was like a 30-some yard catch for the touchdown. I guess it was 29. I thought it was 30, but overall it was a pretty good catch. He was actually going in there and replacing, I think it was Quez Watkins. I'm not saying to start him or pick him up or anything for fantasy. It was just a night worth mentioning because at least he had a few grabs and one was a touchdown. But yeah, don't pick him up in fantasy or anything like that. Dallas Goedert had an okay night. Smith had an underperforming night. You'd hope for more targets, more yards, more everything. And other than that, there really isn't much worth mentioning in terms of the receiving. The number 1 tackler on the Eagles, who also happened to have an interception, was Blankenship. I actually don't know this guy's first name. Reed Blankenship, I got it. So yeah, overall he was doing pretty good. Let me reload all this stuff up. Yeah, I will admit I didn't watch the second half of the game. I switched over to the Bengals Rams for the most part of it. But yeah, Blankenship still had 6 tackles, solo, tackle assist, interception. So solid overall. What you don't like to see is the Eagles linebackers not really doing much. So that means that their linebackers aren't really going to be productive in fantasy. You had Jalen Carter, who got half a sack. He was their first round pick. I've never heard of Tui Pilato, but he had a sack as well, I reckon. Other than that, there really isn't much worth mentioning other than Blankenship with the pick and the tackles, and then the linebackers not really doing much for Philly. Fletcher Cox had the other half of that sack, so the D line's looking solid. But yeah, from a fantasy point of view, really not much worth mentioning here. From the Eagles' or individual defense, the team defense still looks great. They did do kick returns where they got a good 150 kick return yards, so maybe these guys might be worth looking into depending on what position they play. Because to be honest, I don't know. Because yeah, the kick return guys, I'm not gonna know who they are. Even gurus of fantasy and NFL don't know that shit. To be honest, Jake Elliott went in there, went 3 for 3, solid kicking night. Um, so overall, that's what you'd like to see from Elliott, I guess. And then we'll move on to the Buccaneers. Mayfield went in there and struggled, only 146 yards, touchdown and interception. Not a good night. Couldn't get the run game going either at all. 14 for 38, 2.7 yards per carry. Yeah, nothing was really looking great for this offense. Evans went in there and had an okay night. Well, a good night. I'd say Godwin was more on the okay side of things. White had a few catches, but that's about it. There really wasn't much worth mentioning. This was more of a defensive shutdown game. Levante David and Levante David and what's his name? I'm already forgetting his name. Devin White went in there, did really good as a linebacker core. Levante David's still the main tackler, but Devin White's still making big plays. Pussy actually dropped Ricardo Neal, who went out there and had 11 total tackles total tackles. So he did pretty damn good. That's worth mentioning. Same with Antoine Winfield, who had another 11. These two are both looking like a good safety combo for tackles in terms of fantasy. Both might be startable for a lot of teams out there. I believe Ricardo Neal's on free agency, like I said, so he might be worth giving a look. Um, then Delaney had an interception. I believe he's a cornerback. Other than that, yeah, there really isn't much worth mentioning out of this defense. Yeah, that's about it. Let us move over to the Bengals and the Rams game. Now Stafford, he went 18 for 33, 269 yards, a touchdown, and a pick, or 2 picks. Like I said, I think he had a solid night in terms of real life, but the O-line just was getting him killed all night. And the turnovers were pretty bad too, but overall as an overall night, I'd say he did good. He just made a few stupid mistakes. Kyren Williams went out there with 10 rushing attempts. I thought he had less, to be honest, but he had 38 yards, which is a bit underwhelming. And then they did a jet sweep with Tutu Atwell. That was cool, I reckon. And then Puka Nakamura, not Nakamura, Puka Nakuka, whatever you want to call him. Stupid ass name. 5 catches, 72 yards. He did solid. You'd hope for more if you picked him up in fantasy, expecting like a Cooper Kupp. But other than that, solid night. Tyler Higbee had another solid night. It's pretty good. Tutu Atwell, 4 catches. You would hope for more receiving or targets overall, like we already talked about. Overall, there really isn't much to mention because most of these players are already players I talked about on the fantasy side of things. But yeah, there really wasn't really much else worth mentioning other than those 3. Ernest Jones went out there. He's looking like their main tackler. Aaron Donald with the sack and the tackles. It was Avon Witherspoon who actually caught the pick against Tyler Boyd, by the way, if you guys were wondering. So that's worth mentioning. And then there was this guy named Durant. I don't know who these people are, to be honest. Kobe Durant. I guess this dude's like a hybrid NBA player. He thinks he's Kobe Bryant and Kevin Durant. But overall, yeah, there really wasn't much worth mentioning on the fantasy side of things here. Other than that, he had Durant had the 6 tackles solo, but that's really not something I'd try to trust from fantasy. They didn't really do kick returns, so that's not worth mentioning. The Rams field goal kicker went out there and was making all his kicks, so that's good. And then the punting was good for the Rams as well. And then moving on to the Bengals, we had Burrow, who, like I said, he got fucked over by his team around the board, where Higgins did bad, Boyd fucked him over on a pick. Overall, yeah, the O-line got him sacked a bunch of times. Well, once, but overall, the O-line was constantly getting him pressured. He was playing through an injury, so it was a bad night for him, but I don't think it's concerning or his fault, to be honest. And this, like I've said, I've been shitting on him all year. You can ask Big Yawners or Gino if anybody knows Gino. Excuse me, if anybody knows Gino. Um, Overall, yeah, it's definitely not his fault tonight. And then Mixon went out there, had a solid game, touchdown, 3.4 yards per carry is a bit concerning, but it's nothing to really worry about at this point in the season. Jamar Chase is looking like that first overall pick who might start competing with Justin Jefferson if he keeps it up. Tyler Boyd went out there, caused the interception to happen. He's not looking nearly as good in terms of real life as he has been in years past, but at least he's getting the targets for fantasy. We already talked about everything going on with Higgins. There is one thing worth mentioning, and that's Irv Smith Jr. is like not even a factor on this offense. So that's worth mentioning, definitely, because I tried to use him as a backup tight end for Kels a few times. So if you see him as like a projected high tight end on free agency, don't even look at him. It's just not worth it. They don't even seem to be using their Irv Smith Jr. tight end. Dax Hill is actually their number one tackler over Logan Wilson in their linebacker core, which is rare, but it definitely happens. But here you'll see what I'm talking about in general with this whole defense, with what I was talking about with Stafford and all that. Let's count these sacks here. Count them with me, fellas. You know, I know you guys can't. I know Evan can't count, so Evan, this is a learning assignment for you, okay? Dax Hill has one interception, right? Now Sam Hubbard also has an interception. How many interceptions is that? That's 2. Good job, Evan. Okay. B.J. Hill had another one. That's 3. Trey Hendrickson had 2. That's 5. D.J. Ritter had another one. That's 6. So that's 6 interceptions or 6 sacks tonight, okay? 6 sacks on Stafford. Overall, the D-line was just having their way with the Rams' offensive line, constant pressure. Most of them were in the second half, I believe. I think at least 4 of them. But yeah, overall the D-line was looking very good. Sam Hubbard looked good. He was making tackles out there left and right. B.J. Hill, D.J. Reader each shared a sack. Dax Hill had the sack. Hubbard did good. And this is why I was saying not to cut Hubbard. Whenever I was talking to Big Yawners and all that, I think he's going to be one of the more consistent guys out there. I think I'm actually going to pick him up after I finish uploading this video, to be honest, if he's still out there. Yeah, that's probably exactly what I'm going to do. But overall, yeah, the Bengals D-line's looking really good. The corners are the only thing that's questionable. Like I said, the safety's looking better than I expected. And linebackers are looking solid in terms of real life. In real life, the linebackers were great. They were doing really good coverage. But in terms of the fantasy side of things, not really. McPherson actually missed a field goal. I forget from how long it was, but yeah, he definitely missed a field goal. So that's worth mentioning, but he did do really good in terms of fantasy with all those long kicks. If the Bengals offense starts moving the ball like they did tonight in a somewhat decent manner, then yeah, he definitely is going to start having that upside again. Let's see here. I don't think there was really much else worth mentioning. Let me just double check. Penalties, the Bengals were a lot more penalized. Other than that, yeah, there really wasn't much else worth mentioning, to be honest. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of WWD. We'll hit you with some more videos throughout the week. You guys know it. Before we get log off here, something worth mentioning is the person or the team that finishes as the highest overall ranked team at the end of this week will be the person that I ask to be in at least one of the rankings videos that we start making for week 5, which will be next week, not like the week coming up, but like the next week after that, obviously. So I'll ask whoever's looking like they're going to be in first if they want to do it. Let me know as soon as possible if you do or don't want to do it and how many you would want to do it for, and then we can make a duo video. I think you guys will enjoy. Good luck. I think it comes down to Booty Basher and Pussy, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's some guys that technically could still get it if both Booty and Pussy were to lose, such as like just off the top of my head, Rictatorship. I think that's it. I think me and Rictatorship are the only 2-1 ones, or are the only 2-1 guys. Oh yeah, Karen's husband's technically 2-1. So yeah, there's 3-2-1 teams, and then there's the two remaining undefeated teams with Pussy and Booty Basher. So good luck, fellas. I'll ask you guys, whoever ends up getting the opportunity, if you want in the rankings videos. Like I said, I hope you guys enjoy the duo when we make it. And I'll catch you guys later.